Welcome to the Cruising is Life podcast. Whether you're a seasoned cruiser or just starting out, we have something for everyone. So sit back, relax, and get ready to set sail with us on the Cruising is Life podcast.
All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to the Cruising is Life podcast, back for another episode. And we've got a very interesting topic and a very exciting one. But before we get started, as always, we're joined by our co-host, Justin. How's it going, buddy?
Good. Everything's very good.
Love it. And we were actually talking earlier today. We are getting close to our cruise on the Carnival Glory coming up soon.
Yes,
and I
was
guess
115 days, something like that.
Something like that. And I guess even more relevant, we have the Utopia. Both of us are going on. I'm going a little bit sooner, but you're going right after that one. So both of us are going on the ship very, very soon. But yeah, so today we're talking about Utopia of the Seas, and I kind of saw something about this online, which kind of gave me the idea for this podcast. But, we're going to focus on, just Icon and Utopia, just the ships themselves, but do they come out too close to each other?
I mean, it's something we really haven't seen too often. Maybe once with, who was it? Was it Wonder and Odyssey? They were pretty close together, right? I think because of COVID.
Right.
But having something, as big as Icon and basically the 6th Oasis class ship, we haven't really done something like that before. So it'll be very interesting to see how it goes.
Right. And I think the crazy part is nobody's ever launched it's a very rare thing to happen in the industry where one single cruise line will launch 2 ships in the same exact year. But we've definitely never seen a cruise line do that, but also launch the number 1 and number 2 largest ships in the world in back to back.
Right.
Now, it would have been even crazier just like a scenario. It would have been crazier if Utopia came first, because they would have launched the world's largest cruise ship and then 6 months later launched the next world's largest cruise ship. That would have been pretty crazy, but even the other way around, how it came out, it's pretty incredible to think about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we used to get, it was like one a year, maybe one every other year, and now we're at the point where we're launching the largest ships in the world twice a year, or at least this year it's twice a year.
Right, and actually, Tyler just sent all of us a text in that group chat that we have, but apparently Norwegian Joy will be the first ship to be using the new terminal in Port Canaveral.
Interesting. Hopefully that wasn't
Hopefully that wasn't classified.
Yeah.
Whoops, sorry, Tyler. But yeah, interesting. That was fair game. We were on the podcast. We were talking about ships, so
that's true.
That's on you, bud.
I blame Tyler for that.
But yeah. Anyways, back on topic. That caught my eye there for a second. But yeah, it's incredible to think about, and like you mentioned, it's Odyssey and Wonder, and that was mostly because of COVID. And I think there was still Odyssey came out in 21, and then a couple months later, but into 2022 came Wonder. But the only other time I can really think about, when that happened was this was actually back in 2016, so really not all that long ago. But we had Harmony and Ovation came out pretty much a couple months from each other, actually maybe even closer, because they came out, I think, within about a span of 1 to 2 months of each other, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, especially back then, it was really weird.
Right.
I think we're starting to see it a little more, frequently now with just how many ships are being built.
Right, exactly. And with that one, I don't think we ran into, not that this is an issue that we're talking about today, but I guess this type of scenario or this thought process. But with that one, it really wasn't that big of a deal because, at the time it was an Oasis class, the newest Oasis class, world's largest. And then we also had Ovation of the Seas, but Ovation was going out to Australia and out to China, whereas, Harmony was coming out to Florida, whereas now in 2024, we've got the, Utopia and the Icon both coming to Florida, luckily different home ports, but, within a few hours of each other. But it's just crazy to think that we've got 2 number 1 and number 2 largest cruise ships in the world coming to Florida within the same year in a couple months.
Right. Yeah. And I think it helps, like you had mentioned, that they're in different home ports. When Oasis and Allure came out, obviously they were pretty much a year apart. But they
Right.
both went to the same port. Oasis took the Saturday itinerary and Allure took the Sunday itinerary. But with Icon, obviously she's doing the 7-night cruises in Miami, and Icon or Utopia is coming to do weekend cruises out of Port Canaveral. So I guess at least in my opinion, I think that helps separate the two. So I don't
Oh,
think
absolutely.
Utopia is going to take away as much from Icon as it might have if it was doing 7 nights out of any of the ports. I think the fact that a
Right.
brand new Oasis class ship is going to weekend cruises is kind of puts Utopia in her own little sphere of popularity and stuff versus Icon, which is of course the largest ship in the world, and there was a lot of new things that they did. But it's basically just running the 7-night itineraries, which is pretty basic for a new mega ship. So the fact that Utopia is doing weekend cruises, I think that kind of helps separate the two.
Right, exactly. And it's, again, it's not something that we've seen from Royal specifically or really in the industry other than Disney because they just kind of do their own thing.
Right.
But doing a 3 and 4 night itinerary, I mean, it does kind of differentiate the two.
Hmm.
There are
Absolutely.
people and, there's, I think we're kind of in like a special category. I think we're just kind of like I guess we have the opportunity and like the privilege to go on multiple cruises a year, whereas not many people do. So, but in this scenario, you kind of do give people the opportunity to go on both of their new ships within the same year. It's not that
Right.
often, the average cruiser probably goes one, maybe two a year. There are also some that go more than us. We cruise probably 4, 5, 6 times a year, which is amazing to think about now.
Hmm.
Whereas, a couple of years ago, we were barely getting 1 to 2, like kind of most people. But there are people that cruise once a month, 2 times a month, or month long at a time. Like so, but I guess the average person probably in the U.S. gets about 1 or 2, maybe 3 weeks, or so of vacation time a year. So you get a couple days here and there, and that so you use your big week for say the Icon, but then you get to use just the one day or maybe the 2 days if needed to go in the
Right.
Utopia, which
Right.
of course is kind of
Yeah.
what they were looking to do in the first place.
Right, exactly. They knew that the market for shorter cruises opened up, the door for a lot of families and just
Hmm.
people in general to go on cruises when they can't either maybe afford the longer cruises because right now the prices are kind of ridiculous, or
Unbelievable.
they
Even
don't
the
have the
short
time
cruises
for
now,
it.
but yeah.
Right, and they don't have the time for it. So the fact that they've got a new ship, especially an Oasis class ship going on weekend
Hmm.
cruises, really opens the door for people to try cruising or try the newer ships without using all that vacation time. So that's obvious, like you said, that's obviously why mostly the reason why they're putting that ship on the weekend cruises.
Right, exactly. And it, yeah, it's definitely the 3 and 4 nights alone is just something that's blown up. And we talk about this all the time. I feel like in almost every podcast, every other podcast, we talk about these 3 and 4 night cruises. But it's really something incredible that's happened in the industry over the last couple of years. And I feel like maybe the, the COVID shutdown maybe had a little bit of an effect to it. And I think the Florida market kind of boomed a little bit more. Kind of the running joke is that everybody moved to Florida during COVID.
Yeah,
So
they're still
and
moving here.
guilty is charged, but you know,
Yeah, busted.
but, yeah, busted. But it the especially in the Port Canaveral and the Orlando area, there's just so many people in this metro area of Port Canaveral, whether it's even outwards of Tampa, where you're towards, and Orlando, Cape Canaveral, even northward or north, and maybe even a little bit south. It's Canaveral is in a good position, is like geographically, it's in a good spot for Florida residents.
Hmm.
If you're traveling out of town, they are the I mean, soon there's going to be the argument of the Brightline, where they have the Brightline station coming soon, which we can kind of get into that in a little bit here. But the thing with Canaveral is we don't get a lot of international, or not international, but um, we don't get a lot of fly-ins like Miami. Miami Airport is within 15 to 20 minutes away from the port. It's a very easy Uber ride. Sometimes there's even shuttles. I guess they technically offer those at MCO, but you gotta sit in a van for almost. It's not an hour, but it's at least 45 minutes without traffic from MCO, I would say.
Yeah.
So it's not very easy to get to Port Canaveral if you're flying. It's very long and strenuous, and it takes a lot of time, and especially on debark day, when the last thing you want to do is worry about getting home. You gotta go through all those
Right.
steps. So it's a lot easier for Miami, Fort Lauderdale, things like that with the access to the airports. So,
Yeah.
and they even kind of said this in the most recent thing with the new terminal that they announced that we mentioned earlier. Whereas that we get a lot of drive-ins here into the port. It's mostly locals or even people that are just kind of doing, weekend getaways and just traveling. Whether it's from Alabama, Georgia, maybe even South Carolina, things like that, or even from South Florida.
Yeah, that's part of the reason that they built that new parking garage over by 6 and 5 and 6, or at
Five and
least closer
six,
to
yeah.
6. Um, yeah, it's unlike Fort Lauderdale, Miami, where Fort Lauderdale the airport's literally a minute and a half away, and Miami is at most 20 minutes away.
Hmm.
With Port Canaveral's, basically the airport being Orlando International
Hmm.
being an hour away, and it being only a 2-lane road, it's pretty much a straight shot over. There's a lot that could go wrong with getting, like if you fly in the day of or fly out the
Hmm.
day you get off. Convenience wise for people flying in, it's not the best. I mean, it could be
Right.
worse, but it's definitely not the best. But yeah, they're investing heavily in, I guess,
Parking.
parking garages. Yeah, because that's
Yeah.
a majority of their target business.
Yeah, exactly. It's very interesting, and like you mentioned, they're trying to do they're trying to do a lot with parking lately. And in the new terminal, they said they're gonna have a parking garage good for at least 2,500 spots. That's crazy to think about. That's a lot of
Yeah,
spots.
yeah, but the the fact that a lot of the people that go there are commuters, whether they're coming from nearby or a little bit further away.
Hmm.
The weekend cruises really plays a big role in that, because a lot of people that do these weekend cruises most likely aren't flying in for 3 or 4 days to
Right.
do a cruise. So, with Utopia going there, it's kind of a perfect fit.
Right. Exactly. And yeah, I personally, I wouldn't, especially for a 3 night cruise, I wouldn't be flying. That's also just a personal thing. I know there are people that definitely do it, and people
Right.
do it all the time. But I don't know if it's me just because I live close by. I wouldn't fly for something so short. But I guess my point is, not many people do that. It's definitely something where we get a lot of drive-ins, especially for the short cruises. But even for we get more flying for the longer cruises, just because our longer cruises a little bit easier on everybody for traveling wise.
Right.
But even on those longer cruises, that it's still tough.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, it's the weekend cruises really help. They're more catered towards, I say, locals in the
Yeah.
sense that you're within 5 or so hours of the port. Maybe that might be a little bit too
Right.
much, but when
Right.
I say local, I don't mean literally living in Cape Canaveral, which, I mean, of course, a lot of people do come from there. But like,
Trying
I
to
would
do that.
consider myself a local driving to Port Canaveral. I mean, it's 2 hours. It's not that big of a deal.
Right.
So
Right.
um,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, and I feel like even with the weekend cruises, Miami it comes to flying in. People probably much rather fly down and go on, I guess, soon to be the Allure, but the Freedom right now.
hmm,
People are probably more likely, if they're going to be traveling and flying for these 3 and 4 night cruises, it's going to be Miami,
right.
just for the easier access to the airports. But
Hmm.
so I guess back to kind of the topic at hand here, but I think they offer two completely different types of cruises and two different things, and I think they're offering just completely unique cruises of each other, even with them coming out so close. I don't know if it's necessarily a bad thing that is
Right.
happening.
No, and I agree with you. I think the fact that Icon is in Miami doing week-long cruises and Utopia is going to Port Canaveral running the 3 and 4 night cruises, I think
Hmm.
that pretty much separates them from, I guess, like competing against each other because they really aren't.
Right.
The markets are very different for the two ships, so that definitely helps. They're not really fighting against each other.
Right, exactly. Yeah, they're not necessarily fighting against each other. They're in different parts of the state, different I mean, it's, kind of our previous tangent that we just had there, they're in two different parts of the state to where it's two different types of cruising goes on in those two ports just for the aspect of, logistics wise. Most people
Right.
prefer Miami. When I was living in Atlanta, my whole life, I I went out of Port Canaveral, yes, from time to time. Typically, we drove, which looking back sucked, but but
I'm
yeah,
sure.
the one time we flew into Melbourne International, which was, I guess, south on 95. But even that was a pain to get down there and do all that, because even that was, it was a much smaller airport, a lot less hectic than MCO, but it was still 45 minutes. It was just going north rather than west.
Right. And, Utopia, their strategy there is really to try and draw people that are going to Orlando already, whether it's
Mhm.
for Disney or Universal, whatever they're doing in Orlando, and kind of like, hey, spend a few more days and go on a cruise for a few days, and it's going to be
Mhm.
on, the second largest ship in the world. And then, Miami with Icon, their strategy really is just to, people that are looking to go on a cruise, and that's the only thing they want to do for their vacation. For
Mhm.
that particular vacation is to get them on that ship because it's doing the 7 nights. So again, that helps because they're targeting two different demographics, and that's where the port placement kind of comes into place. Because you're not going to put a ship in Miami and try and advertise it as competing with the theme parks, which the ship might be doing that, but you're not
Yeah.
efficiently doing that out of Miami or Fort Lauderdale. So the
Right.
port placement was pretty important, I guess, in this situation. And then obviously Port Canaveral's getting Star, but that's just a separate situation compared to what Utopia is doing.
Right, exactly. I think Star's not really like I wouldn't say Star is like kind of, I guess, quote unquote problem. Not that it's a problem, but I guess that's like the only word that's coming to my mind when I say this. But Star's not much of an issue, I guess, because, it's still a little bit further down the road. And all
Right,
that's doing is replacing, a similar ship in a sense.
right.
Um, it's going from a new Oasis class, Oasis 5 Wonder, going to an Icon class, which is just a little bit more things like that. Whereas, yeah, I guess you're still making that jump in Miami, but you're also just not. I don't know. I've lost my train of thought here.
I hate when that happens. But yeah, basically what we're trying to get at is these two particular ships are being marketed
Completely
for
differently.
different purposes, and
Right.
the port wise, obviously Icon was destined to go to Miami regardless.
Yeah.
But
Right.
Utopia going to Canaveral versus Miami or Fort Lauderdale was pretty strategic because they are literally advertising this ship to compete with the theme parks. I'm pretty sure they said that in a meeting once.
Yes, I know they've actually said that about Icon specifically, that they want to make it like a not necessarily a theme park at sea, but they want to draw the theme park crowd towards their ships with, the thrill water park, the flow riders, just everything that these ships have to offer. They have everything. Again,
Right.
speaking from experience, like Icon had just about anything I could think of on a ship, other than, the roller coasters and the go karts,
Right.
that the competitors have. But like, I mean, honestly, as somebody that loves to go to Disney, I have the annual pass, all this, and same with you. But like, I'd much rather go on Icon than go to Disney World. It was just so much better of an experience. It was so much more fun. There was sometimes it felt like there was maybe a little bit more to do, and there's a little bit more variety of things
Hmm.
to do rather than standing in line all day, going on, a ride here, a ride there, or just sweating in the heat all day long and have a heat
Right.
stroke eventually.
Well,
Like,
there's nothing wrong with that.
right. And don't get me wrong. Again, I love going to the theme parks. Again, annual pass holders, things like that. But, um, yeah, I mean, you have you have that aspect of it where yeah, if you want the thrills, you can go do the water parks and things like that. The water activities. You also have other things where you have the Broadway shows. You have the high diving shows with the Aqua Dome, the Aqua Theater. This There's so much more in a so much different way on the cruise ships, and especially on these Icon class ships, and even kind of pushing it, but the Oasis class ships too. There's just so much more, but in a different way than what you'd get at a theme park, which I could easily see would draw people towards the ship rather than some of the theme parks.
Right, absolutely. And like we said before, that's pretty much what they're going for now. It's this family style vacation, which is, cruising over the
Mm-hmm.
last, 15, 20 years has kind of been about that anyways. But
Mm-hmm.
their Royal Caribbean specifically has taken more steps, I guess, to really hone in on that family vacation side. I mean, like with Icon, the boardwalk now is what, Surfside,
Right.
right? That's what's called, Surfside, and that's basically a family specific area on the ship. Whereas
Oh, it really
before,
is.
they had a kid area here, like the little kid water park and stuff, by the slides, but Surfside is literally a family designated area, and that seems to be what they're going for. I mean, even with Utopia, I feel like they've changed around some stuff to, or I guess with Wonder they did too, but they kind of started to go in that direction.
Yeah, I noticed a shift, especially. I mean, I didn't necessarily feel it on Wonder, but seeing Icon and Utopia though, and just the shift on like just the overall strategy that Royal Caribbean has on what they're trying to offer, you could really see it even from the 2022 ship Wonder going into 2024 over that span of 18 to 24 months between those ships. Like it was a drastic difference. The Icon was probably the most family friendly ship I had ever been on,
Hmm.
even compared to the Mardi Gras, or even Norwegian probably it probably isn't even close to that question, but you know, I guess the first ship that I would come to mind that being a family friendly ship would be Carnival, the fun ships. They have a roller coaster on board. They have the big water
Right.
park on board. Like that to me sounds like that's a family fun vacation. But the Icon is literally just tailored to do that and more. Like they've got
Yeah.
something for every age bracket, every age group, and just every just demographic of cruiser. Whether you like the small intimate spaces, whether you like the more luxurious side of it, or if you're just looking for a really fun getaway, or if you're looking to have fun with your family. Like
Hmm.
the Icon class, and even it looks like Utopia. Hopefully, is it, that's what they're trying to do with those ships.
Right. And I think, it's a little off topic, but I think once Star comes out and takes over for Wonder in Canaveral, I think that's going
Hmm.
to be huge, for
Oh,
the
it's going
port
to be
and for the
massive.
company. It's gonna really make people rethink, what they do for their summer vacation, winter break, whatever it is. Do we want to go to Disney and spend, however much, or do we want to go on a cruise and probably spend about the same anyways, but get to basically travel?
Hmm.
Um, you know, so it's gonna
Yeah,
be big
and
for when Star comes.
I mean, I say this every time like somebody asks about cruising and things like that, but I'm like, or like why I go on cruises rather than just like go to one place. Like I can wake up every day of that cruise and I'll be somewhere different, whether I'm at sea and just hanging out around the ship. The next day I wake up, I'm in Mexico. The next day I wake up, I'm in Honduras or the Bahamas or St. Thomas. Like I'm all over the Caribbean, or that's just being the bare bones basic Caribbean cruise. I mean, there's times where you can go to Alaska, you can go to the Mexican Riviera, you can go to the Mediterranean, Asia, like all over the place. With these
Right.
cruises, you're not just limited to a theme park that's in Orlando or the theme park in Los Angeles, Tokyo, Shanghai, like Paris. You're not limited to those places. You can go anywhere in the world. If you're near a major ocean or body of water, you're probably going to find a ship there.
Oh yeah, especially these days. I mean, they're building ships like crazy now. So
Mhm. The industry is just unbelievably booming right now, and and honestly, it's even if Icon and Utopia were to be competing against each other, I don't think it would have been a problem at all.
no, I don't think so either.
It's the demand right now in the market is just so, believe it or not, undersaturated with ships. Whether it sounds crazy or not, but there's so much demand in the industry right now that putting out Icon and Star within a couple months of each other and putting them both on 7 night itineraries would have made no difference.
Yeah, it's kind of necessary at this point.
Right. And just to, I mean, I don't know how many people, listening or watching, or I don't know if you've seen it, but the there was like a report that I saw, or like an article I read the other day, where Royal Caribbean's like 90% capacity, like for the
Hmm.
it at minimum for the rest of the year. We're not even in June yet, and we're almost sold out for the entire year of 2024.
Right.
Like that is demand. Like that, you can't, even if you had multiple ships competing against each other, like you still are selling out these cruises. It doesn't matter. Royal Caribbean could care less if like these two ships are competing against each other because they're going to sell anyways. People are probably just going to, the way things are going right now, people are just going to go on both anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
Regardless, I mean, I would have done the same thing. I mean, that's also me, just like as a content creator and somebody that cruises more than the average person. I was gonna go on both anyways, regardless of what itinerary it was on.
Right.
But
Yeah.
it
We,
definitely
we,
makes
we
it.
choose for different reasons.
We cruise because we're just a bunch of idiots and make poor financial decisions. But that's a different story.
Yeah, pretty
But
much.
like, I mean, if Utopia was on a 7 night and replaced Wonder, or heck, even just took over the Saturday itineraries out of Canaveral, like I probably still would have gone on it. But I guess now it's also giving people more opportunities to go more often and more frequently too. I mean, I'm trying to find a good weekend on Utopia to book it and go a second time.
Yeah. Aren't the prices kind of ridiculous right now though
They
for these
are.
weekend cruises? Yeah.
They're pretty ridiculous for just about every ship. I mean, we looked at the Voyager recently, and it was $700 for 4 nights per person.
Yeah,
Um,
that's too much. No, thank
yeah,
you.
for 4 nights. But the it's just so much demand right now that's people are booking for that anyways.
Yeah.
Carnival's prices are pretty low compared to the others, and uh, actually, I was looking at like even the Venezia cruise that we're on. I mean, we barely paid $100 a night to go on that, or for when we go on it. Even the Glory, we have like a premium aft balcony, like it, and we didn't pay a whole lot for it. But yeah, you definitely can't get these kind of deals with Royal Caribbean just because of how much demand there is just for Royal Caribbean alone. They're just doing everything so well that everybody's going on them.
Right, and that's the problem. The fact that they are continuously selling out with the prices they're charging, I would not expect prices to come down anytime soon.
No, I would say maybe in a few years, once we have two more XL class ships from Carnival, we have a couple more Prima class that are maybe done a little bit better, um, aka the Aqua and On. And those 200,000 ton ships in MSC. Like I think once the industry catches up to Royal Caribbean, which they will eventually.
Right.
I mean, you can only build so many Oasis class and you can only build so many Icon class before it's just not going to be practical. Especially once you got to start upkeeping these things 10 years down the road. But
Right.
the,
Yeah.
the the industry will eventually catch up, and I think we'll eventually see the prices come down for Royal Caribbean. But like right now, they've got such a stronghold on the entire industry right now. It's like not even close at all. Like it used
Right.
to
Yeah,
be a
no, they
very healthy, like a healthy competition between the three, and it's just not even close.
yeah, no, they completely took over after COVID. COVID was, it's going to sound crazy, but it was pretty much a launching pad for them to
Right.
take over the industry. I mean, they completely did a 180 on the way they were doing things, and it's been very successful for them. Obviously, it's kind of crazy to see.
Right. A lot of, I mean, they were hit just as hard as all the rest of them. I mean, Carnival took a big hit, Royal took a big hit, but I think what Royal did is that they were very aggressive with it. They took the opportunity.
Hmm.
They took all the pent up demand the from the shutdown. You and me and you know personally. I mean, we were dying to get back on a ship
Oh
during that
my
time.
God, for real.
That was, and fun fact, the time between my cruise on Horizon back in 2019 and then the Mariner, which was, I guess, our first cruise after COVID, like that time between those two cruises was longer than the day I was born in my first cruise. Like that had been the longest time I had ever in my life gone without a cruise.
Damn.
Which there's probably some people that are like that, that are like that were in the same situation, but it's just. But I think what they did differently is that they were already in a spot where they had everything ordered and they had everything started being built. Like they were far too deep, when it came to
Hmm.
trying to like cut costs and things like that. Like Carnival kind of did, um, with Carnival, they had the three XL class ships ordered, and that was they were good with that. So they took those three and they just played it safe and got through, and they're starting to work their way back up. But now they're playing a little bit of catch up because
Right.
while they were trying to play it safe, Royal Caribbean had no other option to play it safe. But by them staying or having basically had no other choice but to be aggressive during that time, it shot them off during the restart where they had just launched Odyssey and Wonder of the Seas pretty much at the same time, and then they had a couple. They had about a year and a half of you know the Wonder of the Seas just being their top dog, but they had so much interest in the Icon of the Seas and Coco K. I mean, they
Hmm.
Coco K was a great thing, and it really wasn't out very long, and it had only been about a year since they had finished it. So they still had a lot of heavy marketing for Coco K for a lot of people. I mean, we've been to it 10 times now since, which is
Right.
insane to think about.
And I never, and it's funny because I'd never been there before until
Right,
after COVID.
we had never been to Coco K before until we went on the Mariner, and then now I think we've literally been there 10 times
Something
since.
like that.
And so there's a lot of the interest in you know going to Coco K, but there's now a lot of interest in this new Icon project that was still building up anticipation. That I think part of I personally didn't like it, but I think it really worked in their favor. All the secrecy behind Icon,
Oh yeah,
just
for sure.
I mean, people were talking about the Icon project for years. I mean, I made a video just talking about like what in the world is the Icon project? Like, what do we even know about it? I remember making a video like that in late 2019, like going, "Hey, it's been like almost 3 years and we still have no idea what's going on with this thing." And here we are in 2024. Yeah, it's finally out, but I mean, back in 2019, people were talking about this ship, and 5 years
Right.
later, 5 years before it even came out.
Yeah, it's crazy how Carnival or Royal Caribbean does, their marketing like that. I mean, we didn't
Hmm.
even know what the ship was going to look like until they were almost done building it. I mean,
The Aquadome was on the Aquadome had just been installed, and they had no other choice to show off what it looked like. And
right,
people basically knew
exactly.
what it looked like, and then they finally gave us a rendering.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, I think it helped market the ship very well because it's. I mean, I think it would have been popular regardless because it's an
Hmm.
amazing ship, but um,
Hmm.
post COVID and stuff, I think it helped.
Do you think the Icon would be as popular as it is if it were the 200,000 tons that they originally promised? Or do you think because it became something bigger than the Oasis and 250,000 tons, do you think that catapulted it into a different, I guess, market or not market, but like a different viewpoint for, cruisers?
Um, I mean, I think it did. I think the fact when a cruise line says they're launching, the largest ship in the world, that
Hmm.
kind of puts a little spice under some people,
Yeah.
and gets them like,
The
oh my
Oasis
God, this is the biggest
class
ship.
Yeah, the Oasis class is a
Um,
prime example of that. I mean, there
right.
it's It was absolutely on purpose. If you don't think that they were claiming world's largest cruise ship and each of the five Oasis, or I guess now six Oasis class being bigger than the other, if you think that wasn't on purpose, you are definitely mistaken because that was on purpose. It's every single time. I think it was maybe just a fluke with the Allure because of the extra 6 inches, but like the tonnage was about the same. But I
Right.
think they realized, they go, okay, well, we can technically market this as bigger. And then that kind of helped them a little bit. And then after that, they will launch the Quantum class, which is not the largest ship in the world. But not to take anything away from the Quantum class because they were incredible ships and they're extremely successful. But whenever they launched the Harmony and still got to claim that as the world's largest cruise ship, that's when they really went, oh, perfect.
Right.
And at that point, it was off to the races from there. And I think that's really what when they started to kind of pick up the pace with that.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
I know they mentioned at one point that, oh, Star's not going to be marketed as the world's largest cruise ship like the Icon is. It's going to be exactly the same tonnage, same everything. I'll believe it when I see it. You know,
Agreed.
the
Nice try,
Icon
Royal
is
Caribbean.
the Icon on paper is 248,000 tons. If the Star isn't 250 on the dot, I'd be amazed.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
if it isn't bigger by 1,000 tons or 2,000 tons, I'd be amazed.
And it's
And
as
same
simple
with
as
the third
adding
one.
like an extra suite or adding a,
Yeah.
switching up a venue or something like that. Like it's pretty easy.
Right, exactly. Unless it's physically impossible, which I think it kind of was at one point, um,
Yeah.
to get any bigger. Because I know actually one difference that they've already said with Star compared to Icon is that there is going to be an extra hot tub, which one
There you
hot
go.
tub, ooh, big deal. But like
Boom.
they had to take that into consideration. They removed that hot tub on Icon because of the weight. They like the amount of water the ship had. It set them over like that threshold where it was like, okay, we have a little bit too much water on board. Or
Uh-oh.
uh-oh. But yeah, now they gotta, and it's same thing with actually it was the same issue with why we don't have that second cantilever whirlpool on Wonder. Part of it was kind of the whole China thing, but it was a lot of water weight, in
Hmm.
that. And I'm surprised it didn't come back on Utopia, but they probably just wanted to keep
Right.
those similar to each other. But you know,
Yeah.
I think they found out after the fact, and after removing the flow rider as well, that they probably could have left one of those in.
Hmm.
But
Right. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, we are getting to the point where it might just be a little bit too close to physically possible to make anything any bigger.
Yeah,
But
which is
you know,
crazy.
yeah, I think we are kind of getting to that point, or at least with what we have right now as far as technology. Give it
Right.
20 years. Give it 20 years. I'm sure we'll see something that's 300,000. Mark your calendars for 20 years from today, and come back to this podcast, and I hope fingers crossed, I might be right. We might see a three.
300,000 tons.
Can you imagine that?
That's great. I mean, we're already at 250, so I mean,
The fact that we're at 250 right now is
yeah.
unbelievable. I didn't
Hmm.
think we'd ever. Well, I didn't think we'd ever see anything beyond the 225 of Oasis, but here we are with
Right.
Utopia now at
Yeah.
236. But you know, 250,000 tons is not something to like just take lightly.
No,
That does not
it's
happen.
it's crazy.
Even pre. I mean, if you take the largest ship in the world in 2007, the Freedom of the Seas, next to Icon, that is 90,000 tons. You could put the Serenade next to the Freedom, and that's what the tonnage is going to be for Icon, roughly, of
That's
course.
crazy.
Like that's incredible to think about.
Hmm. Yeah, these ships are huge. They'll think of something in the future that they want to put on the ship, and it's gonna have to be bigger to accommodate it. I mean, that's what
Hmm.
happened with the Oasis class. They had all
Yeah,
these
that's what happened
ideas
with
of what they
Icon.
wanted to do, and every time they thought of an idea, they were like, "Well, we have to make it bigger to fit this." So that's what happened.
Right, that's exactly what happened with the Icon. They said 200,000 ton ships, or that's what they wanted. They wanted to go smaller, and then all of a sudden they are like, oh, well, we're starting to implement, and I think the amount of time it took for this project to come to fruition from ordering it in December of 2016 to 2024, I think that span of time, Royal Caribbean really changed a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think had they not changed, and it would have been, the same Royal Caribbean that we saw with Oasis and Allure originally. Right. Icon probably would be 200,000 tons.
Probably.
Because if you think about it, between that time of, December of 2016, or was it 2016? Yeah, I guess December of 2016, all the way between then, we started getting ships with water slides. We started getting these smart ships with the Quantum class where they had, they were considered smart ships, the robotic bartenders and just very high-speed internet and just like futuristic type of ships. They started implementing that type of thing into the new modern Oasis class ships. And I think as they built more and more Oasis class, they learned more and more. And they thought, okay, well, this worked really well in Oasis, so let's take that and improve it, or change this that maybe could be slightly improved on the Oasis class, and that just kind of kept notching up the size. Originally, I don't think the Aqua Dome was in the original sketch for the Icon.
Interesting.
Which, I don't know if you know this, but fun fact, in one of the original videos of like them doing the making an Icon, they talked about how, I think it was Richard Fain. I could be wrong on who it was, but I'm pretty sure it's Richard Fain, or it was Michael Bailey. But they like took a napkin, like a McDonald's napkin, and just drew like a dome, and said, "I want that on the ship." And like that's literally how the Aqua Dome came. That's like what it came from. Like there's a sketch on a napkin somewhere, and basically the CEO was just like, "Yeah, I want that dome on a ship," and now we have an Aqua Dome.
I support McDonald's from here on out. They made that possible.
It's crazy to think about, though. And they had so much time to develop ideas and just take ideas they probably just spitball ideas for almost 6 years before they even started construction on this thing. And so in the 1400 bar on Icon, 1400 is of course the yard number for the ship, which is kind of where it got that from, but it pays tribute to the ship, and also to Royal Caribbean as a fleet. There's like specialty cocktails on the menu. Like one of them is called the First Song, which is like a tribute to the Song of Norway. There's also, another one called the Flow Rider, and it's a tribute to the Freedom class because those were the first to get a Flow Rider on it. There's also one after the Quantum class, called the North Star. Like there's a drink called the North Star. And then I think the Icons was maybe like the Big Bubble or something like that. But it was one of those really cool like martinis where they do like the bubble to the top of it, where like when you pop the bubble, all the smoke like dissipates. Like they did a drink like that to mimic the dome.
That's cool.
But they had, I guess, in the menus for that, my cat's like squirming all over me. I'm trying to keep her still. But in the menu, though, they had sketches of the ship, throughout the years. They had a sketch, and they had the years labeled next to them. Like, even in 2018, when the Symphony was coming out, that sketch of the Icon looked nothing like the Icon that we see today. Right. It just showed just different things. And I think even I think maybe 2021 was like the sketch they had from 2021 or 2020. That was the first time we even saw like a water slide on it. And then, of course, the final sketches where we got all the giant water parks on it. But like 2021 was like the first sketch we saw of Icon with a slide even on it. It was just like one single slide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's it's crazy that a cruise line will, when they're getting ready to build a ship, they'll kind of come up with. I mean, obviously, I don't know the whole process. I'm not a marine architect or anything, but they pretty much start with like a general idea, like what they want, and then they add things, they take away things. So
Hmm.
you could see like four, like in this case, you could see like 4 or 5 different renderings of it, and each
Hmm.
rendering slowly gets closer to what the final,
Hmm.
ship comes out to. So I think that's pretty unique to look back on some of the older renderings, just or
Hmm.
I guess drawings or whatever, to kind of see like where they started and kind of got ideas for this and that. So it's pretty cool to see renderings of ships that don't look like that, like where they were kind of planning it out.
Hmm. Oh, absolutely. The funny thing is, one of I think maybe the first or second rendering of Icon looks a lot like the MSC World Class. Just like looking at it now, I'm like, that looks kind of
A
similar.
little suspicious.
A little suspicious there, but yeah, like thinking about that and like seeing what that was probably like one of my favorite things about Icon is just like me as the ship nerd. Like I loved that. That was like the coolest thing to me, seeing all those old sketches and the original sketches of Icon, like before it
Mhm.
even became what it is today, and even before the renderings that we saw, things that we don't even see. Like there's probably renderings of the XL class from Carnival that look nothing like the ships that we see.
Right,
Same,
for sure.
I would love to see sketches like that of the Oasis class, like where they came from and like what they were like originally the idea was.
Hmm.
Like that
There,
stuff is so fascinating to me.
have you seen the one of the original renderings for Central Park on Oasis?
I'm not 100% sure if I have.
Ah, it's been a while since I've seen it, but it's completely different than what it is now. It had like hills on it that you can sit on and different
Really
things. Like it was like a legit Central Park. Not that the ones now aren't, but like it was very unique. I
interesting.
think it's basically where those glass cutouts are now, like the Rising Tide bar, and then they have like the other two. So I think it was instead of those, or at least all of them,
Oh,
like that's like where these like green hill like spaces where you can like go up there and like sit down and stuff. So it was a pretty interesting, concept at the time.
yeah, that is really cool actually. That I don't I probably did see that because I vividly remember it was always, if I would always go on my parents' PC when I was, 8, 9, 10 years old, or, even my grandparents' house. I was always just looking at the original like video renderings and just pictures and sketches of the Oasis class whenever they were still being built. And
Hmm.
so like I probably have seen them. I may not remember that one specifically,
Yeah,
but that's also just another like thing. Like designs change throughout the life of a cruise before it's built, or a ship before it's built. I mean,
right.
they probably said, all right, these hills would be really cool to do, but what if, hear me out, what if we put a bar there instead that moved up and down like an elevator? And
Exactly.
that's where probably how we got the Rising Tide bar instead of
Yeah.
hills and Central Park.
Yeah,
Like it's
it's very cool to see. But you could probably, if you were to look it up online, you could probably find it. But yeah,
probably.
like I said, it's interesting to see the evolution of a ship after it's done and kind of see
Hmm.
like where they were thinking and different ideas and stuff. So it's cool. It's very interesting stuff.
Right, exactly. It's pretty neat. But I that was like
Completely off
that
topic.
was like on topic, but completely off topic. Like, because I
I
guess we
love
were
it.
talking about the Oasis and the Icon the whole time, but that's not really the topic of Oasis and Icon the whole time.
Right.
But like,
Oops.
I guess it's just really cool, like thinking about what they've done and what they tried doing with some of these ships throughout the years. Um, but I guess getting back to it, I mean they are, I would say they truly are as similar as they can be. They're completely different ships, and they're two completely and vastly different experiences. Even
Yeah.
with Utopia being heavily inspired by the Icon class, I think that is the most Icon of the Oasis class. If that
Hmm.
makes any remote amount of sense,
Yeah.
the way I
I'll give
worded
it to
that.
you.
All right. Um, but like that's probably the most heavily inspired ship from the Icon class is the Utopia, but it's going to offer such a different experience because it doesn't it's not the Icon class, it's the Oasis class.
Right.
Whether it's certain things that were left out or certain things that the Icon doesn't have.
Yeah.
Not that Johnny Rockets makes a difference, but Icon
Right.
doesn't have
Oh,
Johnny
it makes a
Rockets.
difference, all right.
Oh, it makes a difference.
Can you tell?
But the random restaurant here and there, the different venues, the different layout. Oh my God, I can't get over how good the layout on the Icon class was. It was such a good layout. It was like the Oasis class. They redid the layout of the Oasis class, or they just improved it like times 10.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
having a multi-level promenade was just the coolest thing. That was like the best thing, because the Oasis class promenade, it can get pretty busy, just like every other cruise ship. But on the
Yeah.
Icon, not only does the top level not get too crowded because it's split onto two sides, but because there's people walking around two different sides of the ship above you, the promenade, as giant and wide as it is, doesn't feel very crowded.
Right. Yeah, and that's,
The
especially
elevator
with the size of
banks,
the ships, that's what you need.
right? The elevator banks are just extremely wide and open, and going up and down in between the neighborhoods. Like, there is an actual staircase that goes from the middle of the promenade up into Central Park, or from Central Park down to Surfside, things like that. Like, it's pretty incredible how they just took that and just improved on it.
Right.
Yeah, so they're two different experiences, and again, two different markets, two different types of cruising. I mean, I think the last thing that would impact the sales of Icon would be a 3 and 4 night ship, despite it being a brand new ship, and a brand new ship from the same cruise line. I think the last thing that's going to impact the sales of Icon is going to be the Utopia, just because of what it is.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, it's not an internal competition. I think they probably had that in mind when they were setting up itineraries. So
The
I
demand is
think
there.
they're pretty deliberate. Yeah. Oh, it's there. All right.
It's absolutely there, and the people that probably preferred to do, the Utopia for a week, they just booked back to back.
Exactly.
And and I saw on TikTok once. I don't remember who it was, but there was an email that went out and from Royal Caribbean. It's like, hey, did you know we still have another cruise ship coming out this year? And the person was talking like, oh, is Royal Caribbean nervous about Utopia of the Seas? Is like, do they think it's not going to be successful? Things like, they're not. It's more of just the way they phrased it. Absolutely.
Right.
Just the way they phrased it, and more of just like hey, I know you love Icon. We've got another one coming.
Yeah. Yep.
We've got another one coming. We've got another one coming next year and the year after that. That's pretty much what they meant by the phrasing of it. Yeah, maybe could have been a misinterpretation of it, I think, to an extent. But I think they probably could have worded it a little differently. I think so, but
It's
Royal Caribbean does not. There's no competition between these two ships at all.
Right, and it's really just comes down to the fact that they've been marketing Icon so much for the last few years, especially the few months leading up to and after her first sailing. So now that, not that the hype has come down from that ship, but now that they're getting closer to a new ship, they're just starting to advertise that one much more, because they really, but recently they have been a lot more, but it's really all been about Icon up until recently.
Right.
So
ever since
that's all
yeah, it's all marketing. It's a marketing cycle. Once your big new flagship is out, you give it about a month, and then you start focusing on the next best thing. It's the same thing with Wonder of the Seas. Once Wonder hit the market, Wonder probably got a little bit more love just because she was the newest for a little bit longer. It was still, we still hadn't even seen what the Icon looked like at that point. We were still almost a year and a half from even seeing what the Icon looked like. So the Wonder got a little bit more love than, some of the other ships, and even the Icon, just for the fact that, the next ship wasn't out for so much longer. But it's a marketing cycle. It's like
Yeah.
I like to think it. I mean, I'm a video game nerd, so like I think of it as, you know, Nintendo's not going to advertise the game coming out this December when they've got a game coming out in 3 weeks. They're going to
Right.
they're going to advertise the video game that's coming out in 3 weeks. They're going to tell you how great it is. They're going to be releasing trailers of it. They're going to tell you, hey, here's a pre-order button, or like, it's available this day, and this is what you can anticipate and you can look forward to. They're not. They may say, oh yeah, like people may know about the thing coming out in December, but right now they want you to focus on the ship, and in this case, like, or in this example, like the video game, they want you to think about the one that's coming out now, because
Right.
they're not making money yet on the game in December. They're making money on the game that's coming out now.
Exactly. So that's all it is. Just marketing.
Exactly.
It's just something we haven't seen before. That's why it seems a little weird, but perfectly
Right,
normal.
exactly. Yeah,
Makes sense.
exactly,
I mean,
perfectly
when
normal.
it comes down to
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and again, it's not normal to see something like this, and I don't think we'll ever. 2024 is a special year for the cruise industry because I don't think we'll ever see this again.
no, I don't.
Not
I
at
don't.
all.
Well, I'm
Um,
sure eventually we will, just because there's so many ships. But I think
I may bite my
they'll
tongue on that
probably be a
one
little more
because,
spaced out.
yeah, I may bite my
Yeah.
tongue a little bit on it just because of what I've heard Carnival might have cooking. But as far as like launching the number one and two largest ships in the world,
Yeah,
we will never see this again.
I
I'd be
agree with that.
when I say, oh, in 20 years we'll see a 300,000 ton ships, I don't even think in 50 years we're going to see a number one and two largest ships in the world coming out within 6 months of each other. Less than 6 months. 4 months.
It's crazy. Appreciate it because
That's never going to
that
happen
doesn't
again.
happen very often.
No, it's not going to
If
happen
ever
again.
again.
And if it ever does happen again, probably won't be, this conversation of, oh, is one overshadowing the other, or is one impacting the other as far as sales and revenue? It might be a completely different conversation. Whereas it could be, whatever giant of the seas is, overshadowing, the Goliath or whatever it is.
Right.
Like it could be that conversation where, yeah, like this ship is taking away from the other ship that just came out. Whereas this one, they're just offering two different things. And that's probably why, honestly, they're doing the 3 and 4 nights partially for Utopia of the Seas. I probably to keep it on two different things, so that way it doesn't happen.
Right.
And I've kind of had this idea since they announced the 3 and 4 nights, and 3-4 years from now, whenever it kind of comes that time to reshuffle the ships every 3 to 4 years, like every cruise line does, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Utopia on 7s.
It'll happen eventually.
Utopia eventually, at some point in her life, will go on 7-night cruises. I can
For
guarantee
sure.
it.
It's
I would
guaranteed.
gladly put money on it. That's
Yeah.
how confident I am that she will eventually go on 7s. But right now, the 3 and 4 night market for cruising is just so unbelievably popular, so in demand right now, that it's worth putting their brand, the Oasis class ship, on it. And it's also, with Icon of the Seas taking a brand new 7-night itinerary, and a little known fact, Icon was delayed. Icon originally, they had plans on launching Icon in 2023. They were aiming, because I know originally, before they even showed what the ship looked like, they were saying, oh, Icon's going to be based in Southampton for the first season, which is going to be just the winter season of, late 2023, and going to come over to Miami in 2024. They did say that. But little known fact that she in fact was not ready winter of 2023. She was ready spring of 2024.
Right.
So I mean, yeah, it wasn't necessarily a public known fact or anything like that, but Icon was delayed. At least she did come out later than expected. She really came in a lot later than expected, if you really think about it, because when they ordered her in 2016, she was scheduled for 2022. But then, COVID impacted that. So she got pushed to 2023. And then, of course, probably a little bit more COVID impact pushed to 2024.
Mm-hmm.
So, they did not plan this either. This was probably, I think Utopia may have been a 2023 ship on paper while Icon was originally a 22 ship. Obviously didn't work out that way.
Probably.
Everything kind of started getting pushed back. But Icon got pushed back a little bit further than they anticipated during the construction process, which when you add 50,000 tons to a ship, you're going to take a little bit longer to make it.
It happens. It's understandable.
It'll definitely happen. So they definitely originally did not plan for this to happen. They definitely wanted, one ship per year. And that's what most cruise lines want, is one ship per year, to avoid this conversation of, are we taking away from our sales from our brand new investment?
Right. You're not. We promise.
Right. Of course, the way that Royal Caribbean's been doing it, that's just like, of course they did it right. They did it very well, and it's proving to be extremely successful for them. And they've now started an industry trend, whereas Carnival's already looking into putting XL ships, thank God, on 3 and 4 night itineraries. So it may not have been planned, but it's working, and I think they did the right thing.
I agree.
So with that, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up the stream here. I hope you guys did enjoy listening and watching and everything. Any final statements?
I'm excited to go on Utopia in September.
I am
looking forward to it.
I am 85 days away from sailing on Utopia of the Seas, so very excited for that. Very, very excited for it. So yeah, with that, thank you again for everybody who's here on the live stream, listening and watching, or anybody on Spotify or Apple listening to the podcast. Next week, I think we're going to be talking about MSC's presence in Port Canaveral, I think is what we've decided on. So lots of more podcast ideas and podcasts coming here for you very soon. I hope you enjoyed this week, though. And with that, we'll see you next week. Have a good night, everyone.
Goodbye.